Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our newest edition of Chats with Legends. In this edition, we bring you Penelope Walcott, field recordist, PhD in music composition, screenwriter, sound designer, and a lot more. Stay tuned to our conversation and don't forget to follow us on our social media. How are you?
Very good. We made it.
We made it, yeah. So I have a couple questions for you. And the first one is, when did you started? When did your career as a sound designer started?
I received a full scholarship actually to study in England. And so I studied at the University of York.
Yeah.
It was a portfolio. It was an expectation that you just wrote a set of pieces and that would be your portfolio. And I did some research on the side as well. But in terms of sound design, I discovered field recording, although I didn't know that's what it was. But I just began recording random stuff in and around York, just when I was doing my PhD. And at that time, I didn't put field recording together with film. I just thought it was just this weird thing that I was interested in doing.
Yeah.
So I finished the degree, and I decided that there was this thing with sound that I really just wanted to get more into. And so I went to Trebas Institute in Toronto and I studied audio engineering. And I thought, okay, music production, maybe that's it. And in that course, it was just for a year, they had a small component on post-production for film.
Okay.
And when I did this course, it was like my brain exploded, literally exploded. And I'm like, wow, this is it. This is it. And so I just started putting sounds to different visual things that I found. And then I think a couple years after that, I made a decision to go to Vancouver to study sound design. And that's where we really got into the nitty-gritty of what that is when you're putting sound to film. And really, it's not just sound, it's also you're creating a world. You're creating a sound world for whatever, whether it's animation, whether it's gaming, whether it's long form, short form, you are creating a sonic world.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Still do. It's great. It's absolutely amazing to be able. I mean, you can have the same scene. I always use this example with friends of mine. Let's say it's just a regular scene, a regular movie, and you see a guy's walking down the street, suburban street, trees, nice sunny day, a little bit of breeze in the trees, maybe a couple cars go by, you see a couple dogs walking, whatever, and he's just walking and he's got some flowers.
Yeah.
He's got some flowers. The camera follows him, right? Camera follows him, not too close, but close enough. We know it's a guy. He walks to a house, knocks on the door opens, and he walks in.
Yeah.
There we go. We've got our visual sense, right? So as a sound designer, obviously I'm working with the director and the producer. Let's say, remember I was talking, right? Let's make it a really cold breeze. Let's make it like really cold, like the kind of cold breeze that you would hear high on a mountain.
Yeah.
Let's make those dogs barking like kind of low and kind of weird. Like they sound like dogs, but they don't quite, there's something off about them. The cars going by, we don't really hear the cars. I know we see them, but we don't really hear them. We see this guy walking. Let's make his feet sound a little heavier.
Yeah.
You know, like when somebody's in a psychological space that they're just really kind of heavy, let's make his footsteps heavier. Okay, now he's walking into this house. Is this a happy scene? Is this a happy movie? Right? So so the sound designer's job, obviously working with the director, producer, whatever, writer, if this is a happy movie, then it's happy and the sounds will match that. If it's a horror film, and I was describing more stuff I would do with a horror film, then you would change the sounds for that. So that's what I love about sound design. It's just the power to psychologically change. I mean, visual is visual, right?
Yeah. But to find the perfect sound, you need to be very attentive to the environment, right?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
that's great. But I was here wondering, can you talk about the impact? How did your PhD impacted your career as sound designer?
Well, it's primarily what I said before. It was, well, actually, because of my background as a music composer, and this is a huge advantage, and I've been told this by audio engineers and editors who have decades of experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, if you speak to a lot of them, many of them come from a musical background.
Great.
And one of the things that I'm told constantly is that having a musical background is a huge advantage. And I can't tell you, every time I've spoken to an audio engineer, editor, whatever kind of editor, and I tell them about my background, they're like, "Oh wow, great." Yeah. So it's so I would say for anyone, if you're planning on getting into this career and if you have a music background, sell that.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect of it. So
the other thing, to have
the other sorry to interrupt.
No, I was saying it might be great to have those kind of great feedback, positive feedback from people, but isn't it?
Yes. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. The other thing, more specifically, that when I design sound, I think of it musically. So even if it's not a specific type of musical sound, I don't know. Let's say, the simplest thing, clapping, right? I mean, obviously, rhythmically, it makes sense within a musical. But if we think of musical, the musical. The sort of grains of music as harmony, melody, and we'll take rhythm out of it, then this is just a sound, right? I could hit my computer, I don't know if you'll hear it, and it's still rhythmic, but it's noise for a lot of people. So as a noise, it's a particular kind of sound. So if we look at, with my background in music, I know that there are certain types of what are called transients. Transient is just that particular, it's not harmony, it's not melody. It's like when the drumstick hits the drum, that particular sound, that's the transient. That's when you see the actual waveform, it's that point when the drumstick hits the snare or whatever kind of, or the hand hits the drum, or my hands are clapping together.
Okay.
So as a musician, I know that there are, drums don't all sound the same. Rhythmic stuff, rhythmic instruments, there are many different types. And so I can process those sounds based on my experience of working with and actually composing for. That's a huge advantage. Think of these sounds musically. And then it sort of gives you, it's kind of like if you're a painter and you're only working with 5 colors. So instead of working with 5 colors, you're working with 100.
Okay.
So that's essentially what the degree does. It gives me a greater palette of knowledge to work with.
So you might have some kind of challenge you have been facing in this area. Can you share a little bit about the biggest challenge you have been facing in your area of expertise as sound designer?
In the industry?
Yeah, in the industry, yeah.
Not getting enough work. That's probably, but I mean, we can all say that. And then given the last 2 years, it's right. We're all in the same boat pretty much. And so it's, a small pool of work, and many of us who are competing for this small pool of work. I haven't really gotten into gaming, but that is something I am kind of beginning to look at. I am very much interested in interactive sound design, and that kind of takes me not just in post-production for film, but also post-production for commercial and industrial ventures as well. Most of us would say would be just that, not really getting enough work. Although I get called for work.
Yeah.
within the job itself, as an editor, we all have our strengths and we have our weaknesses.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that if you have a weakness, then it's to work on that. And that's one of the great things. I say this with humility because I know people have suffered over the pandemic. But
Yeah.
one of the best things about the last 2 years is that I've really worked on what I perceive anyway as my weaknesses. And so because of that, when I approach a film now, my approach is completely different. And yeah, it's made a huge difference.
Yeah.
So I think if you're working in a post house, then time is probably your biggest challenge, because you've got to work to a very, very strict deadline. The same thing is true when you're freelancing, which is what I do.
Yeah.
But there are deadlines, but it's not like, you've got, people across the planet, or, millions and millions of dollars are at stake, kind of thing. It's just you.
Yeah.
So there's still pressure, but so that's probably two of the biggest things.
But you have some kind of partnership with film companies or in the industry that might make something your job easier. Because I think being freelance is it's a little bit complicated if you don't have a portfolio of clients or company you work with. You have some kind of partnership that make your job easier.
Well, you remember when I mentioned about being headhunted?
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at networking, and because of that, I know a lot of people probably don't take it as seriously as I think they should. I could do a bit more actually, but a lot of the jobs I get are word of mouth.
Okay.
I'd say about 85% of the jobs I get are word of mouth, and well paid jobs as well.
That's big. That's amazing.
And it's important, and I think that, yeah, I think that it's really important that when we're in school, when people are studying, that they learn how to network, and just and once again, I'm not perfect. There's stuff I need to work on as well, but as I said, it's people will remember you if you did a good job. They will remember you, and they will ask you to work with them again. And then you just keep on working on these relationships, and then hopefully you'll move on to bigger, better paid stuff.
Yeah, no, that's great. Can you share do you have a kind of list of films, of movie you have worked on, like that movie, that film that impacted significantly in your career? Which movies have you been working on?
Only one?
Okay.
So I do have a list of films that I've worked on, and it's I think I can't say just one. I've learned a lot of stuff from all the different films that I've ever worked on. Um, and it's not necessarily the post-production, sometimes it's the subject itself.
Yeah.
There's a documentary I did, I think a year ago, or a couple years ago, and that was quite interesting. It was a Canadian guy out of U of T, I think, U of T or York. There, I can't remember, but immigrants, particularly immigrants from the global south, coming to Toronto. Toronto, I mean, Canada is, I don't want to say it's all white, it's not, but I mean, that's the history of Canada is largely about European colonialism. Obviously, we've had Indigenous people here for tens of thousands of years. But our most recent history has largely involved our current,
Okay.
which is largely European based, very similar to the United States, but not exactly the same. Anyway, so immigrants from the global south may not have had as easy, or perhaps most immigrants, an easy way of getting a bank loan for very simple things: down payment for a house, paying for a uniform for their kids, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
person have this person's responsibility is to hold on to that money. And so I guess interest perhaps is gained, and then whoever needs perhaps money for a wedding, money to buy a car, whatever, go on a trip, you can then go back into that money and then have it for when you need. There's different cultures have different names. My my sister and I were born in Vancouver, BC, but my parents are immigrants from Trinidad. So I'm pretty sure that something like that existed or exists in Trinidad. And so that's essentially what the documentary was about. And I'd never known. And so that was interesting. That was the subject matter. The documentary itself, in terms of how it appeared, was relatively straightforward. How I did the sound edit. There was some creative stuff that happened with a visual sense, but in terms of the subject matter, it's quite interesting. But more closer to your question, there's a short film that I did for an art school in Vancouver years ago, and it was just basically like a sci-fi, what's called a sci-fi dogfight, and that's essentially like ships fighting and all that kind of thing. And so I just did it stereo, but now since I'm moving into surround and immersive sound, actually, I'm reworking that project, and it's fascinating because now, of course, with immersive and with binaural, if the sounds can come from, the sounds are 360, they're not just stereo left. So reworking that particular project, I think there's another one that I'm going to rework as well. That was quite interesting. There was another project that I did, I think also last year. I'm looking at the name here. What was that called? Oh, Object Reality. Okay. That was interesting because that was the first experimental sci-fi film that I ever did. That was interesting. I love that. And when I did that, it was great. There was a separate composer, and I loved it. I love experimental stuff. And from that short film, I just realized, yes. I love, like, it's funny because when I was at University of York, I did a minor, well, not an official minor, but I specialized in piano performance. And I loved contemporary music. Most art musicians or classical musicians hate contemporary music, hate it. I loved it. I loved all the weird stuff.
Yeah, that's great, yeah.
So it was, and the thing is that because I trusted my musicality, if most musicians, particularly art musicians, it's just, you get comfortable being in the box. Yeah. And that's not to say it can be a very nice box. There are some musicians who they only do Beethoven sonatas, but they are excellent at it. And there's nothing.
What is the secret to be the best one in the business? How do you think that? What do you
the best one? The best, there isn't. I mean, there isn't just. No, literally, there isn't. There isn't, because the biggest strength, actually, I think that's what you're asking. The biggest strength is being able to work and collaborate. To me, it's like when I work with different teams, the biggest the complaint about whomever that I hear consistently, I mean, there can be all these different reasons, but basically it comes down to this person or persons did not know how to work as a team, did not know how to communicate, did not know how to work as a team. That's the biggest thing. So all sound designers or editors or whatever, we all have our different strengths and weaknesses, but what it comes down to is that what people will remember is how well you work with them. And I work very well with people. I'm really chill, and I don't gossip. Those are the two things. I'm very chill and I don't gossip. People are allowed to rant. That's fine. I just just listen. And, you know, I don't think I really answered your question.
No, but it was close enough. It was close enough. But I was going to ask you about, I know last year you attended Canadian Screen Awards in post,
Yep.
yes, yeah, women in post program. Can you share a little bit about the
Yep.
experience you had in that time?
Okay, so that is the Canadian Academy of Film and Television. So I was one of 6 recipients of a grant for their Women in Post program, and it was the first time that they've done this program, and it's a wonderful idea. And the best thing about it is that it wasn't out there for young people who are coming up, who've just graduated and they need to get their foot in the door. So this was more for mid-level, or kind of just beyond, you know, people who have been in the business for a little bit, but just kind of need a little bit of a push,
Yeah.
or wanted certain types of experience. But it's more for mid-level, emerging female women in post, and that's wonderful. When I saw that, it was there's a mentor that I work with. She's an audio engineer. She's got decades of experience, and she was the one that told me about this program, and I jumped on it almost immediately. And so I was really honored to have received it. So obviously, because of the pandemic, there are certain things that we just can't do, and or we can't do now. That's going to change. The program we were told was going to be for a year, but it's going to be extended slightly because now, since things are opening up, it's easier to get into a studio and speak actually face to face, which is wonderful. But previous to that, we've done a lot of stuff online, and so we've spoken to a lot of professionals with our, you know, like my thing is sound, obviously. So I've had the experience of speaking to people whose focus is whose specialty is in sound, but there are other people. There's picture editing. There's picture editing. Different location sound,
Okay.
and there are other aspects of film post and pre-post that has been addressed within the program. So I'm kind of looking forward to, so there's going to be, it's kind of ramping up now because we're all able to actually meet in person. So we're all kind of like, yes. But it's been great meeting and talking with other people.
No, that's great. So how do you see your career in 5 years from now? I mean, talk about the goals and dreams.
5 years?
Yeah.
Oh no, the
years.
dreaded question. 5 years from now. Wow. Well, as I said before, it's I'm becoming more interested in interactive and immersive sound.
Yeah.
And to me, it's still a little bit under the radar, although it's becoming less so. And it's under the radar because it's right now, at the very least, it's perceived as something that's very expensive, and you have to buy all this expensive equipment. And unfortunately, it is still kind of like that. And so we have a technology, which is kind of just at the point of immersing itself within education, within industry, within entertainment, and I could go on and on and on. And this particular technology is very powerful.
Okay.
However, potentially it could be very expensive. There has been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of discussion about this aspect of this technology. So the reason I'm kind of getting into this is because I'm working on 2 projects right now. One of which has to do with, I'll just mention them briefly. I won't get into too much detail. I live in Ajax.
Okay.
And Ajax is it's a town on the close to Ontario, in the southern part. We're about 40 minutes east of Toronto. And Ajax, so during the Second World War, Ajax, then Pickering, we created, how many were there? we were the epicenter
Yeah.
of the Allied effort for creating munitions. And so we created over 40 million bombs,
Yeah. Okay.
essentially, for the Allied war effort in the European theater. And so I'm working towards an installation based on that. So there's that. And then I'm also working on what's called a sound walk. And that's still kind of amorphous right now. I still have to solidify that. For both projects, I'm doing a lot of recording. Is another way, not the only way, but it's another way of telling a story, of creating a narrative. And we have many different ways of creating narrative. The easiest way, you sit around a fire and we tell a story, right?
No.
And there's many different ways. You can read a book, you can watch a movie,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So immersive is exactly what it sounds. You're wearing headphones. If I create a story using a binaural process, that means you can watch something on a smartphone. You can just watch it, but I can create the sounds on the headphones so that it sounds 360.
Yeah.
I hear sounds above, below me, right? 360 degrees. And that's the advantage of binaural. And so it just kind of takes the idea of a story and it just takes it much further. And so I guess 5 years from now, this is something that I can just totally see myself completely just rewriting stories, creating my own stories.
Yeah.
And the important thing to me is that it's not just something that it's just like wealthy people with lots of fancy equipment can do, but you can have just a regular phone.
Yeah.
Well, more than likely a smartphone,
Yeah.
but a regular phone with cheap pair of headphones, and you can get binaural information. So you can still have the experience. You don't have to have a ton of money. And that's one of the things that's really important to me, is that this new technology, this new way of telling a story is accessible.
Yeah. No,
It's
this
accessible
is
for all.
I feel in a master class. This is so it's very amazing because I'm learning a lot here, and yeah, you know that those kind of master class you get in and you don't leave the room has the same person that entered in the room. So it's amazing. It's
Oh,
amazing.
thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I was going to ask you about what is the secret to find the best song for a film, for example.
Oh yeah, I remember there was a I don't know, because it's I think that there's a movie called you'll know it. It's No Country for Old Men. It's the
Okay.
Coen brothers. Do you know that
Yeah.
one? I'll
Yeah.
write it down in the chat. So
Yeah, I'll
it's
search for it. Yeah.
No Country for Old Men. And it's the Coen brothers. I think I'm Coen brothers. There you go.
The
There.
Con for
Okay.
Old Men.
Um,
Okay. Coen
well,
Brothers. Yeah.
so yeah, so you probably know it. But one of the it's not the only film, but it's one of the most well-known films. There's no music in this film at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're kind of used to this idea of
It reminds me the Quiet
sort
Place.
of feel.
This movie reminds me the Quiet Place.
Oh, right. Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point, actually. I always go back to No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember the Quiet Place. I can't remember if there was music. No, there probably wasn't music.
Yeah. It's silence only. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, except for their dialogue. Although the difference with No Country for Old Men is that the narrative was not based primarily. I mean, The Quiet Place. Whereas No Country for Old Men, there was no extra reason for there not to be any music,
Yeah.
and so that was a creative decision that was made. So in terms of, so I've never, that's never been a process part. I'm not part of that process of choosing music. That's when you do film, it's even if it's a small department, if it's a small film, but especially on larger films, music is its own department. And as a sound designer, I mean, if you're the supervising sound editor, fine, yes, because you're the one who will foresee everything sound related. But if you're just a sound designer, if you're just a regular sound designer and editor, no, that's the music is the music editor and the music composer, and they're the ones, that's their baby.
Yeah.
I would normally not have any say in that. So when I work on a short film, almost always there's a composer. They will just simply send me the stem.
Yeah.
They will just simply, yeah, they'll just do that. So normally I've never had, no, I've never had to choose music. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So,
It's definitely something I'm looking at,
yeah.
getting into writing more music.
Is there an idol you've been following? Lately, I've been listening to Hans Zimmer. I don't know. I think you might know him perfectly.
Yeah.
And is one of
Yep.
most respected sound designers. And do you have
Yes.
some idol, an idol that you've been following? His or her steps, like the one that inspired you the most?
Oh, so the music or the composer?
Yes, as a sound designer and music composing, etc.
There is a film. I was just trying to think, just as you were saying, it's a horror science fiction film with Scarlett
It's
Johansson, Under the Skin.
kind of film, yeah.
Under the Skin. I'll write it down for you. Under the Skin. That's the name of the film. I can't remember the name of the director. He's a well-known director.
Yeah, I think I know this movie.
It's a low.
I think I know this movie. Yeah, Under the Skin. Yeah.
It is in it. The name of the composer is Mika Levy, and she is brilliant. She is brilliant. And but she was a composer. I don't think she did the sound design as well. But her work with the sound designer was brilliant. And I always talk about this particular moment in the film.
Yeah.
So it's as I said, it's a horror sci-fi film.
Yeah.
And Scarlett Johansson plays an alien who basically, for lack of a better word, not just eats human, but digests them.
Yeah.
And so the humans have to go into this pool of kind of black water, and they're digested, they melt essentially.
Yeah.
So there's a scene where a human gets into this pool, and then they start being digested.
Yeah.
And so what you see, there's this scene, it's brilliant. What you see is that you don't really see, it could be skin, it could be part of a body. You don't really see, it's not like gross, you know what I mean? And so, but you see it kind of, it looks very soft and kind of formless, but what you hear is cracking and breaking.
Yeah.
And so this sort of thing this sort of visual disconnection with the sound, you see something kind of soft and flowy, but what you hear is a human body being digested, essentially. I thought that was brilliant, and the way the music and the sound design worked with that, I thought was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, being sound designer, being sound designer, you must have an open mind, I think. So because you need to be attentive to the environment, and you need to be creative enough to find different scenarios so you can have that perfect sound for movie, for film, etc.
Yes, absolutely.
I know you
because
I know you're a
scriptwriter
too. I was going to, but you can talk. Yeah, I think you're going to.
Oh, right. I think that I'll move on to the screenwriting because that's I do too many things. I really do. But the screenwriting I actually started a number of years ago. Well, the screenwriting I started a number of years ago, and my first couple of screenplays were terrible. And I mean, I'm still writing terrible screenplays, but at least I know to find the right people who will help me make them less terrible than they are. And so my interest, I love heist films. And so basically you write for what you like. I'm not a big rom-com or romantic film kind of person. So more than likely, unless it involves a lot of explosions and some kind of crime thriller or horror, I'm probably not going to write a romantic film. And so sci-fi, speculative, thrillers, drama, that kind of thing. Yeah. So right now I'm working on a film that kind of the focus is on World War II, but it's about familial, social and interpersonal relationships, and about our own personal stories and what we want from those personal stories, what we gain from those personal stories, how much we want those stories to be true. And and then the consequences for whatever that truth means. So that I'm working on with, I have a relative in the States he's retired now, but I think he was a sergeant in the Korean War, I think in the 1950s. And so we've been working together. He's been extraordinarily helpful.
Do you have any advice for young dreamers, the ones that, because dreaming is some kind of, it's challenging if you don't have that focus, if you have some kind of challenges, difficulties, and some limitations. Do you have a dream advice for young dreamers all over the world? What would you say if you see someone?
For just in general, or just for
in
general?
In general.
In general?
Yes.
Oh goodness, for young people.
But in particular for young women, and young.
Oh, for young.
Yeah, for young women, for young girls.
I think the biggest thing, especially for younger women, and this will depend on the environment that you're in. Some environments are more conducive for women's independence than others. That's not a judgment necessarily, but that is what it is. It's easier for women in some environments to be independent, go to university, not get married right away, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, even in environments in which there are limitations placed on women's movability, there almost always is an importance placed on education. Now, once again, this comes down to money. If there is, I guess, if the child shows enough aptitude at a young enough age, if it's a female child, then there will be support given, usually financial support, so that the child can continue in education. And I think, to me, it's keeping children in education, particularly girls, is extremely important. It's something that I really believe strongly in. We're not running out of people on the planet. We're not running out of babies on the planet. So so it's not as though if a girl goes into university and she doesn't have children right away, that we're gonna suddenly be underpopulated. Women make better decisions about their fertility, about what they would like to do with their fertility if they finish at least high school. So just being aware of the world around you. I mean, at the very least, you can have better conversations or better arguments with your hubby. Much more interesting, I think. So I think, so for me, it's for girls, just try to stay in school as much as possible. If that's not possible, do your best. If you can have access to a library or the internet, just try to find out about the world that you live in. I think that I'm coming from a Western perspective. I'm totally aware of my own privilege when I speak of that. So even if, and as a teacher, because I've taught as well, and I've taught children, I would say that I would speak like, even if you have to leave and you do become a mother, that's also good. I think that it's to be a mother is extremely important, because we are, as women, we are normally the first contact that our child has with the world.
Yeah.
And so how can we create this world? We have to have it in ourselves, right? And then we can create it for, or help to create it for our child, so that our child has a curiosity to discover. So I think that as women, I want us to be able to discover. I want us to feel free, and I want us to feel safe, and I want us to be strong. I want us to be able to stand up, and speak our truth. Speak our truth, and to be honest, and and when we're speaking to our husbands or boyfriends, that we can demand honesty, and we can be honest with them as well. That in our families, if we choose to have them, we can create a safe space for our children, for the people that depend on us. And we can create a space where everyone can learn and discover and discover wonder about the world. I think that one of the greatest things about a family, about the family unit, is that it's a space where we can create future human beings. And if we don't have a family, then we can do this for ourselves. We can create this space for ourselves, for our family, for our supportive units, whatever they are, friends, other family, whatever. And to me, that's part of the power of being a woman. And it's I think the men can do that as well, but we're speaking specifically of girls. And
no, that's great.
I just want us to be able to.
No, that's
I want us to be able to move forward and discover.
No, I'm listening. Sorry, I'm listening.
Oh, no, that was it.
Okay. That's a golden advice, and thank you very much for that advice. And thank you again for giving us this opportunity, this privilege of having you in a Chat with Legends.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you very much for asking me.
So wish you a great day.
Okay, thank you so much for the interview. Okay, thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye. Yeah. Thank you for being part of this edition of Chats with Legends. Today we have this amazing woman, Penelope Walcott, and it was a real pleasure to have this inspiring and so strong and powerful masterclass. Today was a day to learn a little bit more about sound design and a little bit about what does it mean to be a field recordist. And it was a day to believe and stay focused on our goal and never stop dreaming, because it's still possible to achieve our goal, to achieve our dreams. So thank you for being part of our chat, and it was a real pleasure to have you there. See you in the next edition of Chats with Legend. Don't forget to follow us on our social media. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. See you in the next edition.